Hi there, and welcome to the Cotswold Explorer. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and we're exploring the wonderful region of the Cotswolds in southwest England. For the last couple of years, we've been following in the footsteps of Herbert Evans, who wrote this wonderful book, Highways and Byways in Oxford and the Cotswolds, in 1905. We're delighted to announce that the Cotswold Explorers edition of Highways and Byways in Oxford and the Cotswolds will be released on the 15th of March 2023. It'll be available as an audiobook read by me, Robin Shuckburgh, in paperback, hardback and on Kindle. It'll also be available on popular platforms like Audible. If you want to hear a free sample, subscribe to our newsletter and be sure you don't miss it. The link is below. Preface and introduction to an audiobook, Highways and Byways in Oxford and the Cotswolds by Herbert Evans, originally published in 1905. Read by me, Robin Shuckburgh, the Cotswold Explorer, January 2023. At the beginning of September 2017, Ross Arrowsmith and I were about to part company at a local TV station. I'd been presenting a food and drink programme for a while, and Ross was one of the producers. We didn't really know one another very well, despite often working on the same programme, but as I was about to leave for the last time, he asked me if I'd ever considered setting up a YouTube channel. Now, to be honest, I had no idea what that was. But I was very flattered that a very bright 19-year-old young man should suggest working with an old codger like me. So obviously I said, what on earth's that? First, we searched for a subject, starting with food and drink, our familiar territory, but we quickly discovered that YouTube was stuffed full of brilliant cookery presenters. I think each of us thinks we were the first to come up with the idea of covering the Cotswolds, but whoever it was, it set me off looking through my library for any reference book to help us along. And there I came across the Highways and Byways in Oxford and the Cotswolds by Herbert Evans, given to me as a birthday present some years earlier by my son. And so began a relationship between Evans, Ross and myself that has taken us on an incredible journey through some of the most beautiful countryside, villages and towns in England, all of which can now be found on the Cotswold Explorer YouTube channel. Evans' own preface to the book is short and of course very descriptive. I shall read it to you. This is not another book about Oxford, of the making of which, as a recent reviewer reminds us, there is no end. It is only a summer excursion into the hill country that lies to the north and west towards the broad vale of the Severn and Avon. But of Oxford and its colleges, our wayfarer is again and again reminded in the course of his wanderings. Oxford is at once his starting point and the goal of his returning footsteps. Accordingly, in the opening chapter, he takes a preliminary tour through the city. The district explored is that which lies between the Cherwell on the east and the fringe of the Cotswolds on the west. In other words, the northern half of the basin of the Upper Thames. This is a large area, and one which the present volume does not attempt to exhaust. What is here set down is the outcome of individual tastes and individual impressions, and as such, it is offered to the reader. I have written of those places and those passages in their history which interested me. If they also interest him, my purpose will have been fulfilled. I'm going to read to you some extracts from Evans' book. The estates owned by the great Mercian monasteries in the Cotswolds were enormous. As Broadway belonged to Pershaw, Buckland to Gloucester, and Stanton to Winchcombe, So Stanway belonged to Tewkesbury, and here its abbots had a country house. No situation within such easy distance could have been better chosen. Tewkesbury lies low in the valley, and in winter-time was much exposed to fogs and floods. Stanway is from 200 to 300 feet higher, and could bid defiance to the waters, while at the same time it's sheltered from the north and east by the steep background of hill that rises immediately behind the village. For recreation, too, there was the hunting of the stag, which then, and much later, was as wild on these hills as it is on Exmoor today. Indeed, throughout the country, it was only the clearing of forests, the progress of enclosures, and the improvement in farming and the growth of population which finally confined this noble animal to parks and put the fox in its place as the beast of the chase. At the dissolution, the manor was granted to the Tracys of Toddington, and from them in 1771 it passed by marriage to the family of the Earl of Weems. Stanway House, the residence of Lord Elcho, is a splendid Jacobean mansion built by the Tracy of the day. Sudeley Castle is a private residence and not accessible to strangers, but the late Mrs. Dent's Annals of Winchcombe and Sudeley have made both its history and its treasures familiar to all who are interested in the history of the county. When the Dents came into possession about the middle of the last century, the castle was in the ruined condition to which it had been reduced in the Civil War, and such portions as remained habitable have been converted into a village inn. The new owners conceived the idea of restoring it to something of its former grandeur, and so successfully has the work been accomplished that Sudeley is now one of the finest baronial houses in Gloucestershire. It is one of those cross-country Cotswold roads carried from gate to gate across the enclosures, but I shall soon leave it and follow a cart track over the down, which makes it necessary to dismount and wheel my machine. The ruts and rough grass as I climb an ascent through a cornfield require careful steering and keep my eyes fixed upon the ground. On raising them again, the scene disclosed is positively startling. Without being aware of it, I have reached the brow of the steep western face of the hills, and there on the horizon stands the blue, undulating chain of the Malvern Range in all its grandeur. To the northwest appear the distant Shropshire heights, while the middle distance is filled by Bredon, with Dumbleton Hill like an outpost planted in front of it. To the left are the spurs which hide the valley of Winchcombe, while the long ridge of Cleeve Hill rises over all with the brown moorland look of a stretch of Dartmoor, or even of a Welsh mountain. High up on the hillside at my feet is Farmcote, a cluster of grey farmsteads and cottages, forming a hamlet in the parish of Lower Gyting. If you want to hear a free sample, subscribe to our newsletter and be sure you don't miss it.